welcome back to my channel, and today we're going through books/series that I would like to reread. I think I have like 8 books/series here. But the thing is, like, most of the books that are on my shelves are books that I'm like, I could reread that in the future, because that's kind of the whole point of me keeping them. Like, there might be 1 or 2 that I'm like, okay, I'm never gonna reread that. Like, for example, I was about to say like Kathy Cassidy ones that I have like shoved in the back of my bookshelf, but I have actually reread them for a video before, so I want to get rid of. I think, would I like to reread this? Does this represent my taste? And like, most of the things that represent my taste, like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I will reread that one day. Will I actually? Probably not, let's be honest. I used to be a huge rereader, but like, as time has gone on, I'm like, okay, I'm not as big a rereader, and I recognize that like I have so many books I want to get to, and it's just not as easy to reread things as it once was for me. And as I said, I was a huge rereader, basically from the age, I would say maybe 13 to like 16. All I read was basically the entirety of the Mortal Instruments, the entirety of the Infernal Devices, and then like the short stories, and like whatever Cassandra Clare book was being released that year, and then like maybe like 5 other books. Like 5 random other books. That would be my reading for the year. Then I discovered like Bookstagram and Booktube, and I was like, oh, I should read other books. I'm gonna say there is actually 9. I have just added another because I have them right here. So I feel like I'm gonna start with the like really obvious ones, because I talk about reading them a lot. So the first ones I'm going to talk about, I'm only going to talk about really quickly, because I have actually spoken about the fact that I've reread them before, and I literally only reread them over the weekend. And that's the Murderbot Diary series. So like, I read them 3 times now, so like, this is not a surprise that they're books I want to reread, because like, they're really quick audiobooks, and I read them for the first time last year, I read them last year, and I have also reread them this year. So they're really quick, they're really fun, I have a great time, so I will probably reread them at some point next year, let's be honest. So the Murderbot Diary series follows our Murderbot, and it has hacked its governor module, which means it is a rogue sect unit, and instead of like going around killing people or running away or any of that, it decides to watch soap operas, half-ass its job. And then one day the crew is like attacked by this hostile fauna, and it ends up trying to actually do its job. And I love this series a lot. And then along the same vein, again, because this is a book that I've spoken about on my channel, about the fact that I reread it, and that is Radio Silence. I used to reread this every year, but I didn't actually reread it last year for the first time ever. So basically, I read this for the first time when I was in April of 2019, I believe it would have been. So 4 years ago now. 4 years ago. And I loved it, gave it 5 stars. And I read it at the perfect time, because I was finishing my last year of secondary school, and obviously our main character is finishing her last year of like high school, 6th form, whatever it's called in the UK. And I obviously really felt a connection. Like, our character doesn't really know what she wants to do with her life. I felt really seen because I needed that at the time. And then I think I reread it the end of 2019, because there was a read along on Instagram. And then I read it in 2020, and I read it in 2021. But as I said, in 2021, I tried the audiobook, and I did not enjoy it. Actually, I have listened to a book narrated by that audiobook narrator before, because the same narrator that does Elia in An Ember in the Ashes, and I loved her voice in that. But for some reason, I just did not like her reading Radio Silence. And so I was like actually like starting like not loving the book. And I was like, oh my god, like, having like aged out of this, or is it just like the narrator or whatever? And I did start reading it physically, and I did start to enjoy it a lot more. But it's kind of made me a bit scared to reread it, because I'm like, what if happens if I reread it and I end up like not loving it? Because that would suck. Yeah, but I do want to reread it at some point. Maybe this year, since I'm finishing college. Next books that I'm going to talk about, again, books that I reread every year, so they're really obvious. It's A Darker Shade of Magic. Love them so much. I didn't know which editions I wanted to hold up. We have my original. These were the ones that I first read. Also, you could probably guess this from the fact that I have so many Dark Shade of Magic stuff on my wall. This is one of my favorite series of all time. I love it a lot. So these are the first ones I read, and then I didn't know Illumicrate was a thing when they did the original box. I got these off eBay. because someone was actually selling them at a decent price, which was shocking. But I bought the second and third ones because I wanted it. So if there's anyone out there who is selling, who is willing to sell their A Dark Shade of Magic Illumicrate, please. I also, because I want to actually get the second and third book and the black editions, because when I originally bought these, I was going to put them on the books because they're dust jackets. And so like I bought the first book in hardback so I could put them on, but then I was like, they're really pretty. I kind of just want to put them on my wall. So yeah, and then I have the first book in the UK paperback. Would you want to get the second and third one in the UK paperback? Because I have a lot of her books in UK paperback. A Dark Shade of Magic. This follows Kel, and Kel is an Antari, which means he can travel through the different Londons because there's parallel Londons. So there is red, white, grey, and black, and we live in Great London, which is boring and has no magic. And then red is like perfectly healthy, has a good balance of like humanity and magic. Black ended up being like having too much magic, and so it died off. And then white is like it has magic, but it is slowly dying because of being so close to Black London. Kel is an Antari from Red London, which means he can travel through these worlds. His official job is to deliver letters to the other royal families, but on the side he also smuggles things from the different Londons, and he ends up smuggling the wrong thing and ends up setting off a whole chain of events. And I love this series. It means so much to me. I will say, it's really strange when I talk about this because like I'm like, when I think of things that I like love in fantasy now, like I love really complicated worlds, like this doesn't necessarily fit that. But I mean, I still love the characters, so I definitely think like even if I read them for the first time today, I think I would definitely still like them, but I don't think I would love them as much as I do, because these were like the first adult fantasy books I read. I read them again 2019, another 2019. And there's actually another book that I'm going to mention that I read for the first time in 2019. So 2019 was a good year for me, guys. I found a lot of favorites. I think that's why it's like up there as like my favorite series of all time, because like it was the one that like set me off on like adult fantasy, and so I really love it and it means a lot. And I reread this every year, so you've heard me talk about this multiple times on my channel. So I read it twice anyway while I've had this channel, because I remember reading them September 2021, yeah, and I also read them in April of last year during Ramadan. Yes, so I reread these every year, so it's no surprise that this is on the list, but it is on the list for a whole other reason, which is The Fragile Threads of Power is coming out this year. I'm so excited. So it is, and that is going to be a sequel series, and I'm so excited. But I'll be rereading these at some point this year, before that comes out. I think that comes out like October or end of September. So those are like the really obvious ones. So now onto other books. So first we're gonna stick with the 2019 theme, and that is Lost Boy by Christina Henry. I read this in 2019 and I really enjoyed this, and I gave it 5 stars. And I have since read 2 more Christina Henrys. I have read The Girl in Red and I have read Near the Bone. I gave Near the Bone 5 stars and I gave The Girl in Red 3 stars. But if you didn't know, I like ranking books on my channel, and so I ranked like V.E. Schwab, Marissa Meyer, who else have I done? Alice Oseman, Cassandra Clare, all of them. I've done a load of ranking videos, and I would like to do Christina Henry eventually, but because I read this one so long ago, I would like to do a reread of it to make sure that it's still a 5 star. Near the Bone I only read last year, and The Girl in Red I only read this year, and I'm gonna hopefully read a lot more this year. Probably be like next year before I finish that video. So as I said, I do think I need to reread this before I can like give an accurate like ranking of it. So it follows Jamie, and he is one of the Lost Boys, and he's basically Peter Pan's right hand boy, but eventually he kind of starts to doubt all of the things that Peter is saying, and he maybe starts to grow up. I just remember really loving this and being like really attached to the characters and everything. Also, look how yellow the pages are. Whoops. But yeah, so I do really want to read this so I can rank it. Next, I'll talk about The Raven Boys. So I have actually already spoken briefly about the fact that I want to reread this, and that is because I recently finished Greywarren. Well, back in January I read Greywarren, which is the final book in the Dreamers trilogy, which is a spin-off, and I feel like I just didn't really love that series, and I want to reread the entire Raven cycle as well as the Dreamers trilogy to figure out, to kind of see if I change my mind on it a bit, because I do think I forgot some details between like the first and second and the second and third Dreamers books, and also maybe like some like details about the magic from the first book. So yeah, because I love The Raven Cycle. I loved this series when I first read it. I think I read it maybe 2018. Would it have been 2018? I think so. I remember absolutely loving it, and I was kind of let down by the Dreamers trilogy. So I want to like reread it all and then decide whether I'm going to unhaul the Dreamers trilogy. I'm never getting rid of the Raven Cycle, but Dreamers trilogy, that might be able to go. I think this might have been around 2018 that I read them, and that is the Chaos Walking trilogy by Patrick Ness. And so that is The Knife Never Letting Go, The Ask and the Answer, and Monster of Men. And I think I gave 4.54 maybe. I can't really remember, but they're a series. As I said, they're some of the oldest books that I actually have on my shelves, because like that was like around the time that I was like getting really into like Instagram and booktube. That was the time that I was like picking all of these things up, and so I kind of just, they're ones that I have like right there, and I see them all the time because like they're right at eye level when I'm like on my bed. And I just constantly think, because like they are like dystopian books, and I always say that I don't like dystopian, but I did really enjoy this series. And they are also YA, and I've read more Patrick Ness since then, and none of them I've liked as much as these. And like, was it just because I was the right age range, or what? Because like, I do think that they read quite old, like YA. Like, there was like some pretty like graphic stuff, but I'm like, am I just misremembering it? So I would love to reread these at some point, but they are like pretty big, so we'll see. Next, we're going to talk about two series that I've actually only recently finished, so I'm probably not going to reread them anytime soon, but they are like, I want to reread these series. And so the first one is The Run of Kings by Jen Lyons. I love this series so much, and I cannot wait to go back to the start and see all the things that I missed. I cannot wait for it. So I read the final book in March. So I started this in September of 2021. Then I read The Name of All Things in January of last year. Memory of Souls I read December of last year. Then House of Always I read in February. And then Discord of Gods I read in March. And I already want to reread it, but I am going to hold off. But I do think like maybe sometime next year or something I will like do a reread and try and like see all the details that I missed. And I just love these characters, so like any time that I can spend with them is a good thing. We follow Kieran, and he is in a cell, and he is being told to tell his life story. So he tells his life story starting from when he was like sold into slavery, and then the person that is telling him this tells him, no, that's not where your story starts, and starts telling his story from a few years earlier, where he's just a bard's apprentice who does a bit of thieving on the side, and then he one day gets claimed by a lost royal family. And then eventually these two timelines converge, and we see like present day what led to him being in the cell, and we find out that why everyone is so interested in Kieran is because there are these prophecies that might mean he is going to destroy the world. I love this series so much. It is one of my favorites. Again, I do need to film a video where I'm talking about my favorite series of all time. Probably a lot of these will, some of these will definitely make it onto the list, but I really want to reread those. Next one, again, another series that I've only actually recently finished, is going to be the Lycanus trilogy by James Islington, and the first book is The Shadow of What Was Lost. And this one, again, I'm gonna wait a while before I read it. Like Reign of Kings, like I might read next year, but like these ones are probably gonna be like 2 years before I read them. And I really enjoyed I overall really enjoyed the journey that I went on with these books. I gave the first book a 4 stars, the second book a 3, and the last book a 4. And it has again, like Reign of Kings, I feel like there is a lot of small details in this, which I think I would enjoy picking up on the second go. And like there is like a bit of a time travel-y element in there, so I think I would enjoy kind of seeing how that like affects the story, knowing what happens from the first book on. But the other reason that I want to reread this is because it's a bit of a running joke that I am like really bad at reading the books that we need to for that. And so the second book, I actually read that in like 24 hours because I'm a nightmare. And I just feel like I do think that is the weakest book in the series anyway. I do think it does suffer a bit from middle book syndrome, but because I read it in such a short amount of time, I just think I missed a lot of the small details, and not necessarily that I missed them, it's more I forgot them by the time I got to the third book, and so then it took me longer to get into the third book. And so I would really love to reread them all and correct my past mistakes. This series follows Davian, and he is one of the gifted who which means they can control essence, and there was like an uprising a few years ago which like banned people from using this essence. But Davian has never actually been able to control it, and so he knows that he's going to fail his upcoming trials and then basically be an outcast. And then someone shows up and tells him that he should run before the trials, and so him and his best friend do. And they head off towards this boundary that may be keeping like all of these dangerous creatures out. And then the last ones I'm going to talk about are also kind of the first things that I talked about, and that is Cassandra Clare. These are the Infernal Devices. So, as I mentioned, basically my entire reading for like my entire teenage years was Cassandra Clare. Just rereading them again and again and again. Also, ooh, they're dusty. I would like to reread these at some point. I would actually like to reread the Mortal Instruments as well, but like also like that might be a really bad idea. Like I just think it would be so much fun, but like because it's like such a long series, I'm like, I do not have the time to dedicate to like 6 books of the Mortal Instruments, 3 books of these. There's like 3 binds of short stories. I probably wouldn't reread The Dark Archvices or Last Hours. So like we'd be okay there then, I guess. But like that's still a lot of books considering like, you know, I have so many other things I need to read. I want to reread them, but also I really don't want to reread them because as I said, so like I used to reread them every year. And then the last time I reread them was before Chain of Gold came out, which was February of 2020. And that was actually, I almost started my booktube channel then because I was going to film a vlog where I reread them. But then I got so into them that I just didn't film anything. I was like, well, that didn't work. This is my favorite series for the longest time. I still do actually call it my favorite series of all time, like purely for nostalgia reasons, but like it is kind of like my favorite series of all time, which like, you know what, I'm not even gonna be embarrassed about that. You know what, I'm proud. But I haven't reread them since then because I've gotten so caught up in all of the new books that I want to read, all of like the adult fantasy that I want to read, that I haven't even thought about reading these. And also because I am terrified that I will read them and hate them. And like, as I said, because I've reread them so many times and they've never not been a 5-star for me. So like the thought of rereading them and like hating them is terrifying, because then like I think I would actually like be like a little part of me that still has like teenage me in there. I think she would probably die. So like I'm like, it's probably not a good idea to ever reread them. But also, when I read Chain of Thorns, all I kept thinking was, I really want to reread the Infernal Devices. And I don't think it's a good idea, but also I really want to. And also this is one of the only series that will give me an existential crisis, which is always fun. So like I need to be in the right mood to read them, because I will not function properly for like a good couple of days after it. That is because of the fact that like I feel old when I read them now. Like even back in 2020, which was only 3 years ago, I felt old reading them, despite the fact I'm not old. But I felt old reading them, and so I know that I will feel old reading them now, and so it gives me a crisis. So yeah, so I probably shouldn't read them. The only other books that give me existential crisis are Robin Hobb books, and that's just because they're so good that I'm like, this isn't fair to everyone else in the world that you write things that are this good. These are also the Illumicrate editions that they did a couple years ago. This is a Clockwork Angel. Like it has the like cool sprayed edges and all that. And yeah, so tell me if this is a really dumb idea to read them, because like I'm not gonna lie, talking about them, I really want to read them like right now, which we're not gonna do that. I think maybe next month I might do a bit of a rereading time, you know, because so basically yeah, I think next month I might do that. So basically in May I do have one other book plan, because I want to do my reading past book hauls, because I hauled a load of books in May of 2022 that I haven't read yet. So I want to do that, but I do have exams for the first half of the month. So I'm kind of thinking, what if I just pick up a load of these to reread? It's not as though I would be focusing on things that I already don't know about. So that might be a fun idea. Tell me if you'd be interested in seeing that. So yes. So those are all the books that I want to reread. So thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.